So, and it's Feb now, soon we will start hearing the sound of borewells being dug. And it will be the case that we are drawing more and more into the resource, into our groundwater resource. So, this is the situation. There are fights over water, certainly. What we are trying to see here is that in this kind of scenario, how do we get the public, the community to actually participate in learning about the resource and then contributing to its sound management? It's a really tall order with a city that does express a lot of opinion, a lot of participation in expressing opinion does happen. We are asking that how do we get this energy actually engaged into a sort of a systematic way of managing the resource. So here we have a really experienced panel. This one is not that experienced, but he's doing a lot of interesting work as I came to know. So let's hear from them that what have been the methods they have used which have worked, as well as maybe some challenges that you find in actually getting the community involved into understanding the resource, caring for the resource, and then actively participating in some action generation. Even the generation of information about the resources is a way of participation in the management. So when Pushkar and I were speaking, he spoke about actually the link between what we know as groundwater and how people actually it's invisible as we've been speaking. So how do you actually get people involved, and how do you connect things that people are interested in to groundwater?
Yeah, thanks. They're not interested in groundwater. They're interested in water being supplied to them either by PMC, or if they have enough money, they're happy to buy it through tankers. So, how surface water and groundwater are connected and all, they say, the hell with it. हमारे पास टैंकर आता है. The good things that people like Swapnil are trying to do कि चलो, and Ashutosh just mentioned कि चलो aerators तो आप adopt कर लो, आपके घर में आप थोड़ा पानी कम कर लो, प्रेशर में कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं करेंगे. ये यानी this is not just a typical Puneri mentality, it's everywhere, because people from all across the country have come and settled in Pune. So this is a huge challenge. I had requested Ravi to put a few pics on the slide on the projector there. So this is the reality. This is the reality of not just Pune, no matter which urban center we go to. This is the reality. Sadly, all of us are here, because we know that something has to be done, and something has to be done fast. Because for the past year or two, Pune has been, there's a whole host of news items that keep flashing into Pune's newspapers and onto the news channels that Pune में यहाँ पे water cut चल रहा है, यहाँ पे ये चल रहा है. So in spite of 4 good years of monsoon, we are still facing this situation. And the very people who are complaining about this, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've even filed a PIL in the Bombay High Court. कि PMC doesn't give us enough water and they don't have a plan to supply us with enough water. But it is these very people who want to distance themselves कि अरे वो हाईवे के लिए कट किया ना, वो तो डेवलपमेंट है, वो तो जरूरी है. यानी मेरे यहाँ का कोई एक प्रिस्टीन शायद वेटलैंड या वो पाषाण लेक के आसपास का या किसी भी नदी के यहाँ का आने वाला पानी बंद हो गया, इससे मुझे लेना देना नहीं. एज सारंग राइटली सेड, इफ द गवर्नमेंट डज इट, it is not destruction, it is development. If it is done for an access road to my home, it is not destruction, it is development. So the society is caught in a very weird place, but I think it's a very good situation that there's a a rising water crisis in Pune, because I think we only respond to crisis, we don't respond to any other mean. Like Siddharth had mentioned in his presentation, and many others have also put across this point, that Pune is a blessed city. यानी बोलते ना, 5 ने 10 उंगलियां घीना है यहाँ पे. एक म्हणतो ना पहिल्या धारेचं, तर वो हमको तो पहला डैम का पानी हमको मिल रहा है मीठा मीठा, नीचे क्या भेज रहा है वो सबको पता है. अच्छा ये बात भूल जाते हैं कि उसी पानी से बाकी की खेती होती है और वही वापस हमारे पास आ रहा है. So how to engage people is by putting all of these facts in front of them. Nothing short of it will do. Organizations like Jeevitnadi, they've been putting the bare naked truth in front of people कि देखो आपके घर से निकला हुआ कहाँ पे क्या जा रहा है और वो वापस आपके तरफ कैसे आता है. How to get them to engage, like what we've done in Pashan area, ठीक है, we started with plantation on the hills. We thought that that was the it thing to do and it's going to solve all the problems in the world. There was a phase when we were stuck in that zone. Now we know that that is not the case. We were fortunate that a few people on Pashan link road like Ravindra Sinha, Dr. Vishram Rajans and many others, Shantanu is there. They bothered to go a step further. They got in touch with experts like Dr. Himanshu Kulkarni or Shashank Deshpande, and they actually took the efforts to arrange a whole host of sessions over the past 7-8 years. What we see today is a very big milestone of all those efforts. So engaging people has been a whole very, very difficult, but still Mission Groundwater has managed quite a lot. Now that plantation and all is just one, very small, but perhaps a low hanging fruit for the common man. So they end up, coming to the hills and उनको अच्छा लगता है कि हाँ हमने पेड़ लगाया तो वो आगे उसको बचाएंगे वगैरह. They find it pretty convenient. That is convenient for them. So they come and they do it. Nadi ki puja, nadi ki aarti, these are all convenient things. Actually understanding the river, respecting the river, taking care of the river is too damn difficult for an ordinary Punekar. They don't want to do it. They don't like doing it. They don't like it when Shailaja says कि अरे नहीं वो soap वगैरह बंद करो. पागल है क्या? I want to look good ना. So and my clothes should be like that ting ting ting, all of that. So when she says कि नहीं ये use मत करो, people don't like it. So we have to put the bare naked truth in front of them. Nothing short of that is going to do. But you find any of these events, they'll not do it. Other events. So my point is कि plantation and all is a great starting point, but we need a water literacy policy in the country. Perhaps it's there on paper, but I don't know what's happening. So organizations like Aquadam and Mission Groundwater have to, shoulder the responsibility of taking it to a whole new level, and we all, it's high time that we pitch in as well. तो वो जो वहाँ पे हिल कटिंग जो दिखा है, और ये आप लोग कहीं भी जाके देख सकते हैं, पाषाण सोस रोड पे या फिर कहीं पे भी आप देख रहे हैं ना, वो जो ग्राउंड वाटर का कनेक्ट था, ये लोगों को हमको जाके दिखाना पड़ा जब हिल कट हुआ, when the aquifers were actually bleeding out, and the people who are with us for the past 15 odd years कि हमने पेड़ लगाया, कितना अच्छा काम किया है. That expansion work started at the beginning of the lockdown. Within 1 year, half of our plantation is dead because the aquifer has bled out. It bleeds out every year. What was earlier a natural overhead tank of the city, and because the aquifer wasn't ruptured, the hydraulics and all were in place, so there was good amount of retention, retention time of that moisture on the hill slopes as well, so that plantation used to survive. Now 50% of it is gone. Now this is going to be the case across Pune city because there's a whole host of things being planned in Pune, tunnels and whatnot. So how to engage people is like you yourself said, it's a tall order, but all of these facts have to be put in front of people. We can't mask it in any way. They'll respond because unless and until it's a crisis, they're not going to respond. This is my take on it.
Pushkar, thanks. I think what you're talking about is also in a slightly fancier way to say that systems understanding, we cannot shy away from showing the system that exists around water. So I think that's really important. But moving on to Shailaja Tai, I think taking the low-hanging fruit wala ki plantation is a thing that people do get involved in. They happily engage in that. And you could use, and you have been using plantation. But Shailaja Tai, you've gone further in actually using a sort of a citizen science approach to also connecting the understanding of Jeevitnadi to, as was mentioned, of aquifers as well. So could you share how successful that has been and what have been also the challenges and learnings How do you think that's going to scale up?
Okay. Challenges and learnings will not stop for every one of us who are working with the citizens. But thank you for asking this, because when we started working with the citizens, it was like nowhere to go. And we never knew how to go about it, basically connecting people to any water resource. And when creating such citizen science groups, you also need to create a story to bring the people closer to any water resource. So we started with these river walks, where our first stretch itself, we start with the source region, which are always a spring. Then we move on. During the river walk, we go on the bridge, where we take a story of the deluge of Panchit. And Shashank sir just now in the morning mentioned about it's not an alternative resource. Groundwater is not everything is connected with each other. And that's exactly the story which we convey when we are there on the river walk, where we talk about the Panchit deluge, where 100% water was totally emptied from the dams and people had no water. And what were the alternatives? And people still survived for next 10, 12 years. And the alternative, that was not an alternative, but there were streams which are actually flowing with good water quality, and the Peshwe-Kalin era Fadke house or dug wells in each and every vada. So when you tell this story and start connecting people, people start getting that connection with the groundwater, with the surface water. So rivers, everybody understands that it's important. But the bad thing about it, the state of the rivers is so bad that a single individual always feels it is an overwhelming situation for us, how to go about it. So that's where this program started about the river walk. And then we started with the nature walk, where we show a pristine ecosystem where there is a perennial wetland. And what is the connection with the perennial wetland and the groundwater? And this is how, if you connect the story in a woven format, I think that works well. That is one part. And secondly, then getting more and more knowledge or awareness about it, where the knowledge is lacked greatly. We always say that we do not have ecosystem knowledge. Most of the actions which are done is out of ignorance. So I feel both the things are necessary. Awareness is obviously necessary, but knowledge also equally plays an important part, which is very lacking.
Thanks, Shailaja. And this idea about resource literacy, going from a concern and a feeling of helplessness to getting an insight of how things are connected. Pushkar, you want to say something? Okay, you want to give the... I'll hand him this one, or yeah, you can give it to me. Thanks. Mentally getting satisfaction that what can I do? How are things connected? Okay, these are things, maybe it requires a larger level societal action. Here are things that I can do myself. Here are things that I can do with my group. These form the foundations of when we're talking about participation, what I can do to having a group to work with, and then building on that to get a circle of participation, scaling up.
That's where the citizen science groups come into the picture. You exactly took this point ahead, because that's exactly we started. When people start getting connected after the nature walk or river walk, what we do for the river is the next question. And that's where the citizen science groups came into the existence, where mapping of the flora, mapping of the fauna. There are many birders in Pune city. They really love to, keep tracking. So if I keep a target, you keep clicking those photographs, you identify the bird, see the seasonality of the availability of these migratory birds. It creates, there is some job which is given and they are doing something for the river. So this started happening. Then hydrological assessment of the springs, streams which are coming. So all these are a common person can do if we have a guidelines, when organizations like Aquadam exist there. And every now and then if you ask them, they give you number of set of guidelines, and the citizens group form, and then they feel it's a feel good factor that they are doing something for the river because this research is equally necessary.
Thanks. So, what you're saying again is that the the citizen generator, the individual generator, or the the nature educators group, or people who are concerned, they're generating information. This becomes the foundation for a larger collective understanding that we can actually believe in. I mean, these are studies that we have ourselves done, and perhaps this can form the foundation of when we're talking about participatory governance. Maybe this is a very good, strong foundation to build on. We'll come back to this point shortly, because that's also something that I want to throw open to everybody, since I think we need participatory space for this last session as well. But as we go there, with Swapnil, I understand that there is this no cap. Now, no cap is a very interesting word by itself, but perhaps you tell us a little about what is no cap and the new legislation. Not new, it's 6 years old, but how you've been involved in seeing it implemented, and how do you see the role of legislation in groundwater management and groundwater regulation in a sense, and how industry is participating in this?
Right. So, when we talk about community participation, probably awareness is the first step, and so awareness is the first step. Next is intent, and followed by action. Awareness pretty much exists in the community or within the industry per se, but Central Groundwater Board took a very good decision by implementing this as a policy. And that's what they have termed as no cap obligation, which is for industries. So if any industrial facility is outside of corporation limits and they are not being supplied piped water, naturally they have to depend, the only source is groundwater. So they could be drawing groundwater from within the facility, or they could be sourcing from a tanker who draws groundwater. So in this case, they have to document what is their water consumption need. After that, what are their sources? And once this is declared, they have to prepare a report and a plan to conserve equivalent amount of water. So this is an obligation. Declare your water consumption and conserve equal amount of, equal or depending on the area which they are in, which geography they are in, they have to conserve certain amount of water. And this, after it is implemented, they have to submit an evidential report that the system has been implemented and this is how it looks. To add to it, the results have been now monitored by putting in instruments to measure the changes in groundwater table. Earlier the groundwater table was this, now after implementation these are the results. Plus whatever water they are extracting, that is also measured and monitored. And the best part is the instrumentation that they have to put in is tamper-proof. The industry cannot really tamper, or they can mishandle that equipment. That data has to be shared with the government authorities, which is open for them to access. So this was of what experience we have had in the past 6 years, since 2017. Industries have kind of welcomed this policy, and we have seen industries taking it up very fast, because this is a project which probably a facility has to do it only once in a lifetime, but they have to do it right. And they are seeing the results in a matter of 5 or 6 years. The water table earlier, which was 200 meters below the ground, now it is at 20 meters, 25 meters, and the results are being monitored and maintained. So it has come as a very welcome legislation for the industries as a community.
And you're saying that having this kind of a framework which looks fair in some senses and is well regulated is one way forward where people are happy to participate, even though it's quite expensive or not really expensive.
Yeah. Now, I won't say industries were very happy when this was rolled out, but they knew it was important. As I said, awareness, intent. So they were aware there was an intent, but there was no drive to take an action. So this legislation has come as a driver for them to implement. And it is in the piloting phase at the moment. This will soon be rolled out once they get enough information of the change in water table, water consumption patterns, what are the results. This will be rolled out to facilities or infrastructure within the city limits. It could be commercial places, then followed by institutions, schools, colleges, hospitals, and lastly probably the residential sector. So it's still in that phase. Yes, it comes at a cost, but the results are giving them value which is much higher than the cost that they put in. Just to put things in perspective, one of the companies where we work, they manufacture tools, cutting tools, and they need water in their process to quench the tool. It has to they have to heat it up, then to harden they have to put it in water, then again it is followed by some where they have to they need steam. So if they do not have water, the revenue loss that they face within a day, it runs to the tune of crores, whereas the project cost would be around 20-25 odd lakhs. So the ROI of water per se is not as high, but the value that they derive out of water is extremely high. So which is why they are willing to take it up and they are seeing the results. So, yeah.
No, so this is an instance of something that has been created and legislation, and people can see, the industry can see this return on investment in a sense. But the question, I guess, for a lot of us now in the city, I mean, for all of us in the city, is really that the information base that now exists in Pune about the status of groundwater, the realization that at least there are initiatives of many kinds of communities and NGOs and academics which are showing the linkage between water, groundwater and other things in the city. Transport, for example, the building rules, the reservations, and the need for putting all of this together. So, the question to the panelists and then really for the room is that can we start now talking about a bottom-up, community-based, participatory, formal planning process, moving away from, as you said, Pushkar, that demanding the civic service of water supply to creating a participatory water management regime, which we start creating and then involving our governance formal institution. Right. So how would we go about it? What are your suggestions? Firstly, I suppose you agree. If you don't agree, then tell me about it. But if you do agree, then what do you see as the way forward, really?
All right. We, Pune as a city, we are at a stage where, about to explode the real estate sector, the realty sector, and the policymakers think that, this is the new cash cow. All right. And things are heading in that direction. Somebody mentioned in the morning, the UDCPR, the TOD, all of those things. In fact, the ease of doing business policy from the very top, it's there to, unlock all the construction potential in a city like Pune. So it's the home buyer or the property buyer who needs to be made aware that without water, that property means squat. He has to be made aware of that. He's sort of reluctant to admitting it. Ki, without water, there's nothing to it. So he has to be made aware of that. And there's a whole host of very easy things that can be done. As to Dr. Kulkarni used to mention it quite a few times, that the amount of water that his society uses amounts to somewhere over 4,000 mm or something. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ashutosh. And the water, the rainfall in Pune itself is close to 700 mm. So this is a glaring gap. And you go to any society, they are not aware of these facts. They're not, this data, it's, I think this will be an interesting exercise as to how we, make this data more, perhaps visible, not just, relatable is one thing. Relatable is one thing, because this has to be made aware, every ward, if we can go ward wise, every ward has to be made aware of, the report obviously that Aquadam has come out with, the second report, as to this is the aquifer potential in your area, so this is it. आपके छत के ऊपर कितना पानी गिरता है, आपके नीचे का पोटेंशियल इतना ही है, आप यानी कहाँ भर के रखोगे, कितना भर के रखोगे. So this is it. Use it smartly. Because, I don't know when the government is going to stop anything. Let's stop construction. And I don't think that's going to happen. But if the property, the property buyers, they are made aware, then perhaps things may move in a better direction, I hope. Because it's, demand is the one driving the supply. Am I right here?
Yeah, but
And-
what I understand also is that the talk so far has been of public and managed
Public,
aquifer
correct,
recharge on
right.
the one hand,
Huh.
but the flip side is also then maybe a prohibition of individual drawal of groundwater. Is that a reality to think about, or is that too difficult,
Perhaps-
not going to happen?
Perhaps not. My focus, rather what we are trying, I come from the Pashan Baner area. So what we are trying to drill into people's head is that, this is the amount of rainfall we receive. Aquadam has done a great job. In fact, Mr. Gandhi, he has, brought about this entire a mission across Pune where many people are engaged in, installing rain gauges and measuring the rainfall every day. And that is a whole lot of data that is coming in. And there's wide variety in that data. So you are receiving very varied amounts of rainfall in very, different parts of Pune. Even there's just one hill between Pashan and Baner, but the rainfall in Pashan is different than Baner. So the amount of rainfall that you're getting, the factors responsible for that water being available in your borewell, for example, whatever interventions that are happening on some parts of the Baner BDP and Pashan because of the guidance from Aquadam and all of that. Those were basic, not very magical structures. We focused on the simple things, preservation of the grasses and the soils, and in fact that has helped the societies nearby. Their groundwater tables have gone up. So they see the benefit in this. The next part comes with the demand management. So that is the tough part. See, when you don't have water, you have no choice. But when there is ample amount of water, that is when things get, start getting interesting. So yes, and we have been engaging with people to make, encourage them to share their data with us, as in how many borewells they do have, how many wells they do have, how much water they are using, because that's going to add to the data that Aquadam already has. We have a national aquifer mapping policy. I don't know what stage that is at, but Aquadam has done, I think, something better. So all of these things have to be, made digestible for the common man to understand. And then we have to take it to them. This is going to be like a, a monthly exercise, perhaps a fortnightly exercise where you have to keep engaging with the community. Because they just know कि अरे मेरे पास पानी नहीं आ रहा है या फिर मुझको टैंकर से खरीदना पड़ रहा है. But the intricacies of it, the science behind it, that is lost on them. They just know कि नहीं, I deserve this much water, and rather I need this much water every day and I want it. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, and doesn't matter कि वो उसका long term consequences क्या है क्या नहीं, the trade offs that we saw in that fuse workshop, all of those things, those are to like far even beyond their contemplation. So the very immediate things that can be done is, and that we've all been trying on a like area wise, is targeting societies that are actually facing water problems. So they are a little warm towards adopting a few things. Not very much, but a little warm towards it.
Pushkar, what I'm thinking is, and also drawing from something that Guru Das is on the phone just now, but something that he said was, maybe peer learning is difficult. But what might be really great to do, and knowing also that Mission Groundwater is planning to bring out materials, maybe we should look at a cookbook of sorts, or a toolkit of sorts for everybody here who's interested in furthering this. What are the stories that will help? What are the stories that are being spoken about, which is based on our everyday experience of the use of water? How much do I use? How did this cut lead to, the evaporation of the water for the plants that we had planted? How we have done rain gauges, how we have done well measurements, how we have linked up surface and ground. There are all these stories that are live, how a spring has been worshipped and preserved. All of these stories would form very good fertile material that people can relate to. And this could be the resource to take to schools, to take to architects and planners, to the guys who will dig a basement, to say that this is what is happening. This is the story of our city, and we need to get engaged into doing something else now. And so again, back to the question to Shailaja, to you, that is the time ripe to really talk about building up this ground swell in a more formal way that forces in a sense, gets people interested, whether it's a concern for lack of water or an environmental concern, or just that I'm interested in what happens in my ward or area sabha, or whatever it is, my hook by which I get interested into coming together and adding to a plan, When the time for master plan suggestions and objections come, Pune does see 80,000 lakh, more than a lakh of suggestions and objections. Can we use that interest to actually generate or bring together a conversation which is much wider, much more in local story forms, which helps build up a planning process? The layer that we are seeking, the groundwater layer in our development plan for the Pune PMC, as well as I think then the metropolitan region. So if there is a formal process of PKC with PMRDA, that's great. But how can we ourselves create a participatory planning process, which we are saying, Dr. Rajan has just said that the GSDA has offered to place a GSDA person, or more than one person even, in the groundwater cell to bring it, to make it functional, to make it actually operative. So how can we use that opportunity to create this public participation layer with teeth in a sense, because we are putting ourselves behind that planning process. So yeah, like to get both of your responses, and then everybody's in the room.
Recently, we had mapped Aquadam with the help of Aquadam at the stretch Rajiv Gandhi in Aundh area. It's a pristine location. Now, there are 8 springs over there, and there is a livelihood which depends on that, because there is still a surviving fishermen's community which actually has a fish catch which they usually store it till evening, till the fish market opens, into the same live spring till the evening, because they usually catch this early morning. Now, what has happened with the infrastructure, that there is some downstream, one at the Bopodi, one new bridge is upcoming. The whole inundation happened, and the in-stream live spring, which was actually supporting this livelihood, it vanished. It went under because of the inundation. Now the fishermen came to us for complaining that ताई काय आता करू, आमचं ह्याच दिवसामध्ये पैसे कमाई होते, उन्हाळ्यामध्ये तर काही होत नाही, आता आम्ही काय करणार. So the same time something happened, that the person behind that same plot had started excavating. The owner of the plot had started excavating. I called Viraj. I said, Viraj, please have a look. He said, yes, the springs are getting, punctured, whatever, as per you say. And the fishermen were telling me, की ताई तुम्ही त्यांना जाऊन सांगा की ते तिथे थांबवा, तिथे आमचे मासे जिवंत, because it's a corridor. This the groundwater is just not a groundwater discharge, but it is also supports the biodiversity. The in-stream live springs also are supporting the other living beings, drinking water. So I wasn't sure how to go about it. What we did, we thought that we will straight away talk to the owner. We went inside. He checked us out. Then we started tapping the people around, who could be a negotiating factor, to talk to this person. Somehow we got one contact whom he knew. We went there. It just happened just a week ago. And he said, I'm going to be building something, whatever he has planned, some court, some sort of a sports activity is going to happen, but there is going to be a construction. Then I convinced him, it could be a win-win situation for you as well as the environment. If you save this, you can use the same water into your own premises. So your demand for the water is going to be reduced. He got convinced. He said, aap bolo kaise karna hai? I took one of my colleague who is a landscape designer. I said, we will do the designing free of cost for you. Whatever you want to do, you save this, because I was more concerned about the in-stream live spring. At the same time, now I'm talking about the primary stakeholders as a fisherman. I'm talking about the secondary stakeholders, like we as a community. And I'm also talking about the tertiary stakeholders which have no concern about it, as you have been talking since we started this discussion, whether it's a government or the builders or who have nothing to do about it. So how do you bring them? Fortunately, just before that, we won a case in NGT where we had also complaint about groundwater springs into these areas. And NGT has fortunately has given a good results, saying that these springs need to be preserved. Now again, Aquadam came into for a help, and they have now marked the influence zones. So now the recharge areas and discharge areas have to be restored by the local governing authorities. They have no option. So now this is how, if you get a chance and opportunity, and if you try to tweak the things can happen.
Yep. Over to you. Yeah.
However, I'll pick up the string from that. So this is one short story. When I started this work in 2012, I used to go to Ganesh Pandals to share what water is, what are the practical aspects of water, why it needs to be conserved, what if we do not have water, the neighboring nations, without even having to fire a bullet at us, they can paralyze us or they can take advantage of our situations. So that somewhere struck a chord with a gentleman who was, I think, 70 years old then. At a society, when we went, he said, we wish to revive our borewells. They have been defunct for a good 10 years, but there's a story behind it. I said, why now? So he said, it was my first granddaughter who had come in our family, and my daughter, my granddaughter, their in-laws, the whole family had come to their place. Unfortunately, around that time, around that week, there was a water cut in the city. And he said, with so many people at our home, I did not even have water for my granddaughter's basic sanitation. So he said that was so, he felt that nobody should face this kind of a problem. And this is when I thought, when you spoke about that China, Pakistan war, that is something different. But we are struggling with very basic needs if we do not have water. And that's where he got the things done. And he was quite happy with all the results. Whatever that having said that, that gentleman with no interest, he has gotten us over, I think, 42 projects in the past 10 years. So he has been a water steward in the real sense. The point being, we are also a part of the community. We, as in each one of us. There is a trade-off. There is development, but the development is for us, for the citizens. We are a part of that development. Roads are built for us, or construction happens because we want that kind of infrastructure. But we, as members of the community, if we pass on these kind of stories from a solution mindset, not from a critical mindset that this is not done, people don't understand, government doesn't understand. We ourselves are a part of the entire system. So if we are able to communicate this in certain way, I think we can easily influence at least our first family or our tier 2 family or the society or the community that we stay in. We are very much critical to spread this kind of thing. So this was one story. Second, I had read APJ Abdul Kalam's book, Ignited Minds. So there he has mentioned that it was, I think, he became president in the year 2003. Around 2004-05, he decided that he will go and speak to the youth of the country. He was, I think, 70 years old then. He said that the potential that the youth has, it can easily tackle India's problems in a way that we have not even imagined. Whereas imagine he was a rocket scientist. This came from him. So I picked up on that thread, and that's where I started going to schools. So I thought, the schools, the students, they are not even my customers or they are not even my audience. But I started telling them these things in a story format, and it's so good to hear that they in turn educate their families in this sort of story format, that why water was important or why it has to be conserved. Maybe not now, 15, 20 years from now, that will show some kind of a result where these very children will be a part of the community who would want to make that change. So again, awareness, intent and action. So awareness has to be done in a certain way where it drives intent among the decision makers who can afford these kind of things, and then the action, these very children or the youth, they drive this kind of an action. So this very much combines the bottom-up approach. At the same time, when it comes as a legislation from the top, somewhere we can bridge the gap in our own way, in our very own personal way, is my thought.
No, thanks. I think these were really good insights, and a lot of storytelling also happened here. So, one suggestion that Mission Groundwater and others here, if we can actually use many of these stories, there's very short stories, but they could be used as examples for our own work. I mean, putting together these for a toolkit for continuing the participation work.